prevent it when we can, attack it when it's there, and work on mitigating it before and cleaning up after. So thank you. I thank you all for being here and everything you're doing. This is critical, critical work to every community across America. I hope we don't need to, I hope that all the mitigation prevention works so we aren't having to respond, but I'm grateful that you're thinking about the best ways to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. Senator Carper, recognized for your questions.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks again for giving me a chance to talk a little bit about not just addressing the symptoms of problems and challenges, but also addressing the root causes. So now I've been to another hearing, now I'm back here. And I want to ask a couple of questions. I want to ask a question I think, from Mr. Curry initially, involving how do we improve coordination between FEMA and local authorities. And after that, I want to ask the question, Dr. Moore-Merrill, how do we better support at-risk communities? So before I do that, let me just say that our planet's on fire. It's not just the western part of this country. Our planet's on fire. And NOAA tells us, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration tells us that last year was the hottest year on the planet. Hottest in the year, as far as, way back as far as we can look, hottest year. They have a bicycle race in France the year before that, Tour de France. They had to just call off parts of the race because the pavement was melting on the race. So it's not it's not just incidental to the western part of this country. It's not just sea level rise on the eastern seaboard and other places. It's a real, and as we try to address the symptoms of these challenges, and that's important. It's also important that we continue to focus on root causes. So, of course, Mr. Curry, if I could, with respect to improving coordination between FEMA and local authorities, the evidence is, we think, is pretty clear. The threat of wildfire is escalating at a rapid pace and posing significant risks to the health and safety of communities, not just out west, but across our country. Wildfires are not only more frequent, they are also more destructive than ever before and more likely to burn hotter because of climate change. Extreme and persistent drought create drier fuel for those fires, and its accumulation over years creates the conditions that lead to high temperature firestorms that are extremely dangerous and move fast. The result is more loss of life and more loss of property. The FEMA plays a critical role in assisting state and local authorities in reducing the risks to our environment, our infrastructure, and our public health. And the GAO, Government Accountability Office, has conducted audits in recent years looking into the federal government's role in wildfire management. Question for you, Mr. Curry. Through the various audits and reviews that GAO has conducted, how can the federal government better improve its coordination with state and local authorities? I put my old recovering governor hat on. How can we better coordinate with state and local authorities to more productively address the impact and risk of wildfires?
Thank you, sir. Senator Rosen laid this out really well. I think what we need to do with wildfires is we need to treat them or prepare for them and respond to them the same way we do for hurricanes. And I'll just use a Delaware analogy.
I love it when our witnesses do this. We'll get more time for your testimonies.
So if we expect a hurricane to landfall in Delaware, we also declare an emergency. We don't just declare an emergency in Delaware. We declare an emergency in Maryland, Virginia, and maybe even a couple states north or south of that, because they're unpredictable. We know it's going to be bad, and we just go ahead and assume that's going to happen so we can take all the necessary steps to do that. I think the extent to which, that's not how it works in wildfire. We sort of wait and hope it doesn't happen. We hope it doesn't cross from federal or rural land into a populated area. That's just got to change. That mentality and whatever sort of rules and legislation are potentially behind that needs to change. The other thing we can do to improve coordination, I think FEMA particularly has gotten pretty good in terms of coordination with state and local on response. Recovery programs are the challenge. All these recovery programs across the 30 different agencies of the federal government that provide some type of assistance, they were never designed to work together for recovery. So like Senator Langford said with the permitting, they all have different rules, requirements, timeframes, and they're not designed to work in concert together. And so what happens is at the state and local level, that's just a very, very frustrating process in the years of recovery after.
All right, thank you for that. I noticed some of your colleagues up there nodding their heads and trying to wish they had a Delaware example they could offer as well. Dr. Moore, Merrill, if we could, I already telegraphed my pitch, but question with respect to supporting at-risk communities. And fire departments in Delaware and across our country are depending more and more, as you know, on federal assistance to effectively respond to wildfires as the threat level has increased over time. As my colleagues on this committee have heard me say more than a few times, we got to find out what works. We got to do more of that. And what specific measures are the U.S. Fire Administration and FEMA taking to ensure timely and adequate support for at-risk communities, particularly in terms of healthcare and infrastructure resources? And also, how can we build on successful efforts to keep up with the increasing threat level of these devastating wildfires?
Thank you for the question, sir. Yes, USFA is certainly leaning into our communities and particularly their vulnerability to wildfires. We've noted throughout the hearing today the impacts of climate change, which you've brought up already, the various impacts. We've looked at the vulnerabilities of our land areas and where we're building communities toward fire-prone geographies. And so this continues to escalate our risk. We have to lean into, and where USFA was leading, to advocate for building codes that are based on science. We're advocating for technology to be able to be introduced. We're advocating for more and more complete data, quality data that can be leveraged to help us understand the fire risk index, not just in the wild land space, but once a fire hits communities, we have no idea today the dynamic nature of that fire. And so, yes, we can equate it to hurricanes, and we should elevate it to that recognition level. But what we cannot do, like a hurricane, there is no cone for a fire. So we can look at the cone on hurricanes, we can prepare for evacuation. In fire, we do not have that. So there is one caveat. Evacuating communities is very dynamic. And this is a challenge that I will say to you, we are leaning in heavily on wildfire evacuation, how we're going to prepare communities to understand. Right now, we use a ready, set, go. Well, ready and set should be already happening, not in the midst of a fire. And so we have to understand that when we hit go, that's in the midst of a fire. If we have not leaned into preparing our people across the nation to be able to evacuate, then we're going to have issues like the Paradise Fire, where we had 85 people trapped on the egress route, like Lahaina, where it was so fast, the time for evacuation was minimized. And so there are dynamics of wildfire that do not match the hurricane model that I don't want to lose base. The other thing I'd say, Senator, is highlighting, as you have in our communities, the real effect of continuing structure fires. So it's not always a wildfire that starts with vegetation. We have structure-to-structure spread that happened in Lahaina that becomes conflagrations in our communities, but also we have already lost in homes where people should be their safest. Almost 600 people since January 1 have died in their homes. That doesn't mean all of the people who've been displaced. This is from fire in general. You said America's burning. I'm going to echo that. America is burning, and we need to be attentive to all methods of fire that is bringing that about.
Mr. Chairman, could I have maybe another minute? Thanks very much. Yesterday, Democrats, senators gathered to hold our annual caucus retreat issues. It was just a wonderful time to share ideas and what's working and what's not. Republicans had a similar kind of caucus, I believe, yesterday. And one of the things I mentioned to my colleagues yesterday is about, in terms of what's actually causing this, the root causes behind these, our planet on fire. About 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions in this country are coming from our mobile sources, our cars, trucks, and vans that we drive. And probably another 25% comes from power plants that generate our electricity, coal-fired plants, natural gas-fired plants. And maybe another 20% comes from manufacturing operations, think asphalt plants, think steel mills. Those are the three majors, 30%. 25%, 20. That's like 3/4 of the root causes and the contributors to this problem. We're working on all of those as a country. We're working on a lot of those and trying to provide maybe some inspiration for provide leadership for the rest of the world. So I just want to know that we're not just addressing the symptoms of these problems, which are tragic. We're also going after the root causes, and we're all in this together. So thank you very, very much.
If I may, sir, on the greenhouse gases, wildfires themselves produce greenhouse gases that then contribute to climate change or are causing the drought that help perpetuate wildfires. So this becomes a very circular in nature problem. So thank you for recognizing that.
Thank you. Thanks, and thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Carper. Mr. Curry, the GAO has issued a number of reports on the federal government's emergency management efforts on wildfires, on